There is a deep, almost unbearable loneliness that comes with being misrepresented. As a chosen one, you have endured seasons where your truth was buried beneath the noise of lies, where your integrity was casually questioned, and where any proof of your innocence felt suspended just out of reach. Yet this silence, this spiritual isolation is not a cruel accident. It is a deliberate, sacred classroom. It pulls your attention away from fragile human approval and anchors it in the unwavering gaze of the divine. In this cocoon, the need to be understood by everyone is stripped away, making room for a pure reliance on God as your sole witness. You have carried the heavy assignment of integrity in a world that celebrates performance and deception. You have felt the quiet ache of watching falsehood flourish, while you were instructed by heaven to remain still. This waiting has been the final refinement of your spirit, testing your patience, your inner stability, and your confidence that unseen justice is still justice. When you chose not to fight, not to argue, not to rush into defense, you stepped into the highest form of spiritual surrender. That silent obedience announced that your character belonged to God alone. In that moment, you created the exact spiritual conditions necessary for divine intervention. Spiritual law is not symbolic. It is precise, active, and relentless. Every careless word spoken against you, every hidden act done in darkness, has been recorded with flawless accuracy. And now the balance has shifted. The season of concealed truth is closing, not because you forced anything, but because spiritual law has reached its inevitable tipping point. A witness, a piece of evidence, a system, or a divinely positioned individual is being moved to act on your behalf. They are not responding out of emotion, but out of undeniable truth that can no longer remain suppressed. This is your moment to stop striving and start receiving, to step back and watch God defend what you surrendered. As we explore the 7 spiritual mechanics behind this unfolding vindication, your only task is to remain in deep, calm, sober expectation, because your peace is the final confirmation that your trust was placed correctly. Point 1, the activation of the prearranged witness. The first fact is the activation of the prearranged witness. This witness is not a random occurrence. They are a key spiritual agent who was positioned years ago, perhaps a minor acquaintance, a colleague, a bystander, or even someone quietly observing from within an official structure, who passively holds the exact piece of factual evidence that validates your truth. Their existence is not accidental. They were woven into your storyline long before the conflict ever surfaced. While they may seem insignificant, spiritually they are a precise instrument placed by divine intelligence. Their activation is triggered only at the moment when the chosen one's inner refinement has reached completion. And when the divine signal arrives, their intervention becomes an unavoidable response. They may not have planned to speak, step forward, or intervene, yet they feel a profound, almost physical, compulsion, a spiritual pressure that overrides fear, reputation concerns, or personal cost. They are simply the vessel carrying the exact beam of truth that was stored through them for this very moment in your life. The concept of the prearranged witness underscores the meticulous, long-term nature of divine planning. Nothing about your vindication is improvised. The universe does not scramble for evidence when the battle reaches its climax. It strategically embeds the truth-bearer inside the very environment where the falsehood was constructed. This witness often holds a position of neutral authority or access to documentation, proof, or first-hand observation that others cannot dismiss. Because of their credibility, their eventual testimony becomes irrefutable, cutting through lies like a surgical strike of clarity. Psychologically, this moment is often marked by an abrupt awakening inside them, a sudden surge of moral clarity that they can no longer suppress. They begin feeling a growing inner resistance to participating in the lie, to remaining silent, or to allowing injustice to continue unchecked. This clarity arrives not through logic, but through spiritual imperative. It overrides their ego's instinct to protect itself, to avoid involvement, or to maintain comfort. Something higher takes hold, something that says, enough. Speak. They may not even understand why they feel this way, but they cannot deny the force behind it. This is the moment the divine activates them. Their activation is synchronized precisely with the chosen one's energetic release from the need to defend themselves. Vindication cannot arrive while the chosen one is still fighting, grasping, or explaining. The spiritual law requires surrender, not of truth, but of the emotional urgency to prove it. As soon as the chosen one genuinely releases the battle for vindication, the spiritual signal is sent into the unseen realm. The witness, who has been held in standby mode, quiet, dormant, but spiritually prepared, is suddenly compelled to move. Their action is the external confirmation that the trial of silence was not a punishment, but a divine strategy. It proves that your quiet endurance was necessary to secure an objective, uncontaminated advocate who speaks without bias. If you had rushed to defend yourself, their testimony would have been dismissed as your influence. By keeping you silent, the divine ensured the proof would come from a place no one expected and no one could refute. The movement of the pre-arranged witness is more than intervention. It is legal, spiritual, and energetic confirmation that the highest power has taken jurisdiction over your case. Their step forward marks the moment when heaven's verdict touches the physical world. It is the final obedience required from you and the ultimate confirmation that your trust was correctly placed. When the witness speaks, it is not merely their voice, it is the echo of divine justice, finally breaking the silence. Point 2, the nature of the irrefutable proof. The nature of the irrefutable proof being released is crucial. It is not subjective. It is objective, factual, and legally or energetically solid. It is the missing document, the quiet recording, the time-stamped record, or the financial trail that cannot be refuted by the opposition. This proof bypasses the need for emotional argument or personal testimony. It is designed to be a sober, clinical revelation that shifts the external narrative based on cold, hard fact, allowing the chosen one to remain in their peaceful state while the evidence fights the battle. The divine ensures the proof is so absolute that it makes the process of correction swift and clean. What makes this moment so profound is that it marks the end of speculation. For the chosen one who has endured months or even years of false narratives, insinuations, and character distortions, this proof becomes the long-awaited arrival of balance. It stands as a silent warrior, sharp, flawless, and incapable of being bent by human manipulation. It requires no embellishment, no defense, and no effort from the chosen one beyond simply standing still in the truth they have known all along. The power of this proof lies in its unassailable objectivity. The falsehood against the chosen one relied on ambiguity, hearsay, and emotional manipulation. The opposition's entire strategy was built upon shadows, misleading interpretations, selective storytelling, and exaggerations designed to provoke confusion. They weaponized uncertainty and thrived on the absence of clarity. But the proof released is specifically designed to dismantle these flimsy pillars by introducing an undeniable fact, an element of reality that cannot be argued away. This could be data, documentation, or the testimony of a neutral third party whose position makes their account beyond reproach. The divine orchestrates the timing to perfection. The proof does not appear too early, when it could be challenged, twisted, or buried, and not too late, when damage would be irreversible. It arrives precisely when it carries the maximum impact with minimum chaos. And the spiritual fact is that this proof was intentionally shielded from the opposition's attempts to destroy it during the long trial, often hidden within complex systems or obscure records that the opposition overlooked in their arrogance. While the chosen one felt abandoned or unsupported, the truth was quietly being preserved in the background, protected by a higher intelligence that saw every move, every lie, and every attempt to cover tracks. The chosen one must recognize that this proof is a tool of divine surgery. It is deployed not to satisfy a vengeful desire, but to restore energetic integrity to the spiritual environment surrounding their mission. The purpose is healing, not humiliation. The purpose is alignment, not revenge. Divine justice does not operate through theatrics. It works through precision. Its irrefutable nature means the time spent arguing is now over. The evidence speaks for itself, demanding immediate acknowledgement and rectification from the external system. There is no need for emotional escalation, defensive explanations, or retaliation. The truth in its purest form strikes with quiet authority. And when truth carries its own weight, the chosen one no longer needs to carry anything. This shift allows the chosen one to move from the role of accused to the role of validated leader, with minimal friction. Their dignity remains intact because they never had to lower themselves into the mud to prove their worth. The divine arranged a scenario where the universe itself became their advocate. This transition is not merely a personal victory, it is a spiritual repositioning. When the proof surfaces, the chosen one steps into a new season, one marked by restored credibility, elevated respect, and renewed authority. What was once hidden now becomes the cornerstone of their elevation, and the same individuals who dismissed, doubted, or spoke against them are now required to confront the undeniable truth. This is not to shame them, but to complete the cycle of divine order. In this alignment, the chosen one walks forward with peace, understanding that the proof was not just about clearing their name, it was about clearing their path. Point 3, the energetic collapse of the false narrative. The release of this proof initiates the energetic collapse of the false narrative. The opposition's lie was never as strong as it appeared. It was held together by a sustained, costly, energetic investment, an ongoing effort of manipulation, illusion, and emotional coercion. The irrefutable proof acts as a spiritual dissolvent, a divine solvent of falsehood, causing the entire structure of the lie to rapidly lose its energetic integrity. What once appeared solid suddenly becomes fragile. What once seemed believable now appears grotesque. The people who once supported the false narrative will experience an immediate sense of disorientation and repulsion from it, as the low-frequency energy of the lie is exposed and its vibration is no longer compatible with their awakened awareness. This collapse is quick and often silent, resembling the structural failure of a building whose foundation has suddenly turned to dust, leaving the opposition fully exposed in the bright spotlight of truth they never imagined would shine so fiercely. The falsehood was never structurally sound. It was merely energetically maintained through the collective focus, fear, and malice of those who propagated it. Lies require constant feeding. They rely on agreement, on attention, and on emotional reaction. Without these ingredients, they cannot stand. The sudden introduction of objective truth disrupts the low-frequency energetic field holding the lie together. Truth carries a higher frequency, and the moment it enters the space, it destabilizes every particle of deception. Psychologically, the revelation causes a rapid disintegration of belief among the previously misled. They not only recognize the truth, they feel it. Often this generates shame for their misjudgment and anger toward the opposition, who exploited their trust and misled them. This internal reaction is not created by the chosen one. It is produced by the natural consequence of truth resurfacing after suppression. This is the moment the external system self-corrects. No intervention is needed, no confrontation is required. Once truth becomes undeniable, the lie suffocates under its own weight. The collapse is often characterized by speed and finality. There is no slow decline, no long debate, and no gradual shifting of perception. Rather, the mind of the collective snaps back into alignment with reality in an instant, as if awakened from a spell. The opposition cannot pivot or create a new counter-narrative quickly enough because the energy they relied upon, the ignorance, fear, and unquestioning cooperation of the public, is instantly withdrawn. Their desperate attempts to maintain the facade only accelerate the collapse. Every new excuse sounds weaker. Every attempt at manipulation appears more transparent. Their credibility disintegrates in real time. You, the chosen one, are not meant to intervene here. Your role in this phase is to maintain absolute spiritual non-engagement. Do not gloat. Do not justify. Do not explain. Do not step into the energetic rubble of a collapsing illusion to dig around or claim victory. Every impulse to say, "I told you so," must be suppressed, not out of politeness, but out of spiritual mastery. Your silence preserves the purity of the energetic collapse, allowing the full weight of the truth to settle naturally upon the situation without interference. The universe does not need your commentary to complete the correction. The justice unfolding here is divine, not personal. When you remain still, the collapse completes itself without fragmentation. The truth becomes louder because you do not speak. The consequences fall heavier because you do not interfere. And the opposition feels the full intensity of exposure because you refuse to enter the emotional arena that once empowered them. This is how the chosen one triumphs, not through retaliation, not through noise, but through alignment with the natural law of truth, which always, eventually, destroys the lie that dared to stand against it. Point 4, the witness's commitment at all cost. The commitment of the intervening party is to make it right for you at all costs. This is not a casual promise, nor is it the sentimental loyalty of someone who simply likes you. This phrase points to a profound spiritual assignment, a burden placed upon them by forces far greater than their own preferences, comfort, or understanding. Their role is not self-chosen, it is spiritually compelled. They have been moved, sometimes abruptly, sometimes gradually, into a position where their own reputation, their personal relationships, their status, and even their material stability become secondary to the divine impulse to rectify the wrong done to you. This is the spiritual law of reparation in action. When a lie has been spoken against a consecrated vessel, the environment itself becomes spiritually contaminated, and someone must rise to bear witness. In this situation, the witness becomes an unconscious agent of the divine, a living instrument chosen to balance the scales of justice. Their motivations cannot be analyzed through the lens of human logic. They are not driven by earthly rewards or social validation. What moves them is a deep internal pressure, an almost uncomfortable spiritual urgency to restore integrity to the space where the lie once grew unchecked. They feel this urgency not as a preference but as a command. The injustice against the chosen one weighs on them like a stone, and their spirit cannot rest until the truth is revealed, the atmosphere is cleansed, and order is restored. This commitment is the visible evidence of the hidden, active hand of providence, working behind the scenes on behalf of the chosen one. The witness experiences an inner turbulence that intensifies over time. It is the oppressive weight of the accumulated lie, a lie that has distorted the environment, disrupted the energetic balance, and hindered the flow of rightness. The witness, by stepping forward, acts as a purifier, someone through whom the divine scrubs the residue of falsehood from the environment. This is not an easy task. It requires courage, moral clarity, and an unusual willingness to endure discomfort. They may face alienation from people who benefited from the lie. They may encounter criticism for stepping into a conflict that was not their business. They may risk their professional standing or relational networks, but still they move, still they speak, still they choose to stand in the light, even at the expense of their own comfort. Why? Because the spiritual cost of remaining silent becomes unbearable. Every environment that allows dishonor toward a chosen one accrues spiritual debt, and someone must pay it. The witness, consciously or unconsciously, becomes the one who steps into that role. Their sacrifices are not random. They are the necessary price of restoring balance in a place where truth was violated. And while others may not understand their actions, the divine understands, and so do you if you look closely. The chosen one must meet this action with humble gratitude, steady composure, and complete non-interference. You must recognize the magnitude of what is happening. Someone is standing up, not only for your truth, but also for the integrity of the environment itself. Their intervention is the spiritual equivalent of repairing a cracked foundation that others could not see. And because their role is sacred, your responsibility is simply to receive, to stand still, to allow the truth to rise to the surface, and to respect the spiritual cost they willingly carry. Their commitment ensures that your vindication will be complete. This is not partial restoration or surface-level acknowledgement. This is a thorough, undeniable correction. Their actions pave the way for the restoration of your reputation, your influence, your opportunities, and even your material losses. Nothing that was stolen, blocked, or damaged will remain unrepaired. Their commitment becomes a doorway through which divine justice enters your life in full force. And when it is done, the environment itself will testify. The truth was restored, the scales were balanced, and the chosen one was made whole again. Point 5, the preservation of the chosen one's peace. This entire process is designed for the preservation of the chosen one's peace. The fact that the proof is secured and deployed by another person or entity means the chosen one is protected from the psychological and energetic toll of engaging in conflict. This is not accidental. It is a divine mechanism. When the evidence arises from outside of you, it prevents you from contaminating your spiritual frequency with the draining, combative energy of self-defense. You are instructed by heaven itself to remain in a state of quiet trust and non-reaction. Your final, most effective spiritual obedience is to refuse to take back the battle that the divine has already assigned to its agents. This radical non-involvement is not passivity, it is mastery. It solidifies your spiritual growth and preserves the high vibrational frequency you cultivated in the fire of your trial. The spiritual truth is that engagement in external conflict, even when justified, lowers the chosen one's frequency, delays their elevation, and distorts the clarity of the mission. The divine strategy protects the anointing's purity by positioning the chosen one as the recipient of justice, not the executor of it. Your role is not to fight for yourself, but to stand still long enough for the higher orchestration to complete its work through the people assigned to reveal the truth. Psychologically, this practice becomes a final examination of your detachment from outcome. The chosen one must demonstrate the ability to release not only the conflict, but also the desire to influence timing, method, or exposure. You must trust that the justice delivered through an outside agent is superior, cleaner, and more comprehensive than any justice you could have secured through your own emotional labor. What emerges is a form of spiritual discipline that transcends self-defense. It becomes an act of surrender that is rooted in strength, not weakness. The divine requires you to elevate beyond the human instinct to retaliate, correct, or clarify. This is because the moment you step into the arena of argument, you descend into the lower realm where your opponents operate. Their goal is not truth, it is entanglement. Their strength is drama. Your power is silence. And silence is only effective when you understand its purpose: preservation of peace. The preservation of peace is the ultimate goal, not simply as a comfort, but as a spiritual technology. Quietude allows the chosen one to use the energy previously spent on anxiety, explanation, and defense to pivot immediately into the next phase of the mission. When you stop fighting battles that were never yours to carry, you regain the spiritual bandwidth required for your assignment. Vindication is not the reward. It is merely the resetting of the stage. What matters is the mission that continues once the noise is cleared. Your vindication is the divine sweeping away the debris so that your path is open. The justice is not the climax. It is the preparation. By staying silent and peaceful, the chosen one ensures that the victory is seamless and the transition into their elevated role is immediate and undistracted. This silence is not emptiness. It is alignment. It is the soundless movement of someone who has learned that destiny is not negotiated through human voices, but established through divine orchestration. In this refined silence, your spirit is no longer shaken by accusation, expectation, or misunderstanding. You become anchored, centered, unbothered. And because you refuse to descend, the divine has full permission to ascend you. Point 6, the psychological burden of truth shift. The psychological burden of the truth shift falls squarely on the opposition and the formerly misled. The sudden emergence of undeniable factual revelation forces them into an immediate, violent collision within their own minds, a state of cognitive dissonance, where the lie they clung to must now coexist with a truth they can no longer outrun, deny, or distort. This inner conflict becomes a furnace of shame, guilt, and existential unraveling. Those who judged you harshly must now sit with the uncomfortable awareness that their assumptions were not rooted in discernment, wisdom, or fairness, but in convenience, bias, or insecurity. And because you, the chosen one, maintained silence, restraint, and dignity throughout the entire ordeal, their reckoning is completely internal. There is no argument to point to, no retaliation to exaggerate, and no emotional outburst to blame. Their collapse happens inside the privacy of their conscience, where every false word they once spoke echoes back at them undiluted. Their inability to deny the truth is their judgment. For the opposition, the ones who intentionally harmed you, misrepresented you, or orchestrated the false narrative, the burden manifests as a sudden and terrifying realization. The foundation of their security has evaporated. The lie that once protected them has crumbled, leaving them naked before truth, accountability, and consequence. Their arrogance now becomes their tormentor. Their pride becomes the blade that cuts the deepest. They are forced to confront the reality that their cruelty was not only unnecessary, but ultimately self-destructive. This creates an internal punishment far more severe than anything you could have inflicted. Their mind becomes a courtroom where the verdict repeats endlessly, guilty. For the misled observers, the ones who followed the crowd, who lacked the courage to question the narrative, who found it easier to believe the loudest voice rather than examine the evidence, the burden is quieter, but no less painful. They must face the revelation of their own complicity. It is not simply that they were wrong. It is that they allowed themselves to be wrong without resistance. They took sides without discernment. They adopted opinions without truth. And they participated in the injustice with passive acceptance. This realization generates a deep and personal shame, the shame of having been part of a lie when they should have been seekers of truth. And again, your silence is the sharpening force of this guilt. Because you did not retaliate, you did not attack, and you did not attempt to force them into their awakening. They now face themselves without any external noise to dilute the responsibility. The chosen one's non-reaction is the catalyst that triggers the full magnitude of this reckoning. By refusing to respond with anger, vengeance, or emotional display, you remove the only escape route the opposition could have used, blame shifting. Had you reacted with hostility, they could have justified their guilt as a response to your behavior. But because you remained composed, steadfast, calm, and anchored in truth, they are left without excuses. They must sit with the undeniable fact that the suffering they now endure is not something done to them. It is something born from their own actions. This internal pressure becomes the silent mechanism of spiritual justice. It is the self-correcting element of divine order. It forces the aggressor to internalize the full weight of their moral error. And this internal consequence is far more profound, far more transformative, and far more lasting than any external punishment could ever be. The truth shift does not merely expose the lie, it exposes the hearts of those who embraced it. And in that exposure, every soul receives its rightful lesson. Point 7, the final spiritual elevation. The ultimate fact of this vindication is the final spiritual elevation it confers, a moment so decisive and so divinely orchestrated that it becomes the public crowning of a character that was forged in the invisible chambers of private silence. What was once unseen is now undeniably revealed. What was once doubted is now irrefutably confirmed. This elevation is not merely symbolic. It serves as an energetic stamp of divine authority, marking your spirit with a legitimacy that no earthly force can question, dismiss, or diminish. It is the moment when heaven publicly acknowledges what you have been carrying quietly within, the truth of your calling, the purity of your intentions, and the sacredness of your endurance. This act of external correction permanently closes the door on the past season of misrepresentation. The lies lose their power. The distorted narratives dissolve. The shadows that once clung to your name scatter under the weight of divine illumination. This closing is final because it is executed not by human hands, but by spiritual decree. And with that door sealed, your platform and influence are elevated to meet the demands of the next phase of your mission, one that requires clarity, credibility, and unhindered movement. The external vindication is the formal certification of the internal refinement you achieved during your trial. It is the universe's public announcement that the vessel has been thoroughly tested and proven under fire. Every accusation you endured, every misunderstanding you carried silently, every delay that seemed unjust, all of it has now become evidence of your strength, your integrity, and your spiritual resilience. This elevation is permanent, not temporary, not conditional, permanent. It clears the energetic field of all remaining debt, all residual resistance, and all lingering shadows of doubt. The chosen one steps forward now with a clean slate and a divinely fortified momentum that cannot be slowed or sabotaged. And here lies the profound irony that only divine strategy could produce. The very misrepresentation that attempted to ruin your reputation becomes the launch pad for unprecedented public trust. People trust what has survived the fire. They trust what has been proven, not merely presented. And your character, your quiet, unwavering, unshakable character, now stands affirmed by objective proof, not subjective claims. They see you differently now. They see the protection around you. They see the justice that intervened for you. They see the invisible hand that has always been guiding your path. The final spiritual elevation ensures that the next phase of your divine mandate is received with minimal resistance and maximum credibility. The public, and more importantly, the spiritual realm, has witnessed both the injustice and the intervention. The mark of divine backing is undeniable. The season of waiting, suffering, and quiet endurance is now officially sealed. The path ahead is open, clear, and charged with heavenly momentum. Go forward, chosen one. Your mission continues, this time unhindered, unquestioned, and unmistakably crowned. Chosen one, let your peace be your proof, for nothing speaks louder in the spiritual realm than a soul anchored in quiet certainty. Your trial of silence has completed its sacred assignment. It stripped away every unnecessary defense and trained you to rely on divine verification rather than human validation. Now, the divine law of reciprocal truth is moving with precision on your behalf, revealing what was hidden and aligning what was distorted. Trust this unseen process, for spiritual justice always arrives before physical evidence appears. Be grateful for the courage of the witness that has been activated, whether in a person, a circumstance, or a sudden unveiling of truth. Remain in your stillness, because the battle is already won by the facts that are now surfacing. Your peace is not passive, it is prophetic. Hold your position, breathe deeply, and let the truth finish what it has begun. Amen.